I think we have more than 30 organizations over here, right? And we're not very happy that it's during the time which is traditionally supposed to be lunch break. Okay, but if any of you guys are feeling the pangs of hunger, just raise your hands, and I think my team will try and get something across to you. Okay, so that you don't have to go for lunch in between. All right, I think our official lunch break for the event is at 2 o'clock. Right, our masterclass is scheduled to go for under 45 minutes odd. Right, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you here today. Right, so we have some great organizations in the room. Right, I think over the next maybe 45 minutes, we just quickly take you through one of the new concepts that's around in the market today, what we call talent intelligence, and how talent intelligence can make a difference for your organizations, right? All right, can you just close that door if you don't mind? Yeah, may I request everyone to have your mobiles on silent so it doesn't disturb the other people. We'll get started. All right, and what we've also done is we're not just going to do a GAN session here, right? We put together a small experience for you. We are known as an experiential learning company, right? So you'll notice that on your tables there are tabs, right? So these tabs are for you too, and there are also headphones, okay? Because some of our simulations have video-based inputs on them. Can you just switch these mics off? Yeah, so some of our simulations have embedded videos in them where you are going to meet AI-based characters, right? So for most of you, you will have a tab and you will also have a headphone next to you, right? In case you don't have a tab for yourself, feel free to work with your neighbor who probably will have a tab, or my team will also give you a QR code scanner. Just scan it with your mobile. You will be able to enjoy the same experience on your own mobile. Right? So you can either use these tabs or your own mobile, so don't worry about any technical issues. Any challenges? Raise your hands, our team will come and then help you out. All right? So before we get into the actual experience of what we are trying to show here, some inputs from my end in terms of what talent intelligence actually is. Right? How many of us have heard this term in the recent past? Talent intelligence. Yes, ma'am. You raised your hands first. May I have your name, please? Janjal. Okay, and you're from? Yes. Okay. Give me a one-line description. Developing skills. Okay. Yes, I think. Yes, sir. Okay. Okay, very good. So you're talking about demand supply gap between what skills are available and what skills we need as organizations. Yes, sir. Enhancing marketing trends. Okay, marketing. Okay. I thought we are all HR people here. Okay. Anyone else? Yes. Okay. Wonderful. Okay. Great. I think that's an excellent answer. You very smartly put 5 sentences into one, right? So thank you for that. Yes, ma'am.
So basically, HR has a lot of data available.
HR has a lot of data. Yes.
And how are you using the AI apps or the data analytics?
Okay.
Coming up with making it very precise in that way, using that data.
Okay.
For skill enhancement, identifying the skill gap.
Okay.
That skill gap.
Okay.
Making it a future ready workforce.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Dig on me. Okay. All right. Intelligent talent decisions. Sure. Okay. Okay.
About business activities, like for the, there's a lot of data,
Yeah.
but intelligence behind the data at times is lacking or is available.
You're probably overwhelmed with data.
Overwhelmed or entitled.
Yeah.
Don't know anything.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting.
Great. Thank you. So on that note, I'm going to just quickly get into my presentation for the day. All right, and just give you a view of what is happening in the world around us today. All right, so as you all know, so N Paradigm, we are an experiential learning company. So we help corporates with experiential learning technology, right, to help bridge capability gaps. And we are now on a mission to help build talent intelligence as an area of expertise for corporates so that they can make, like many of you said, intelligent talent decisions. All right. So these are many companies that we work with around the world. We have the fortune of having some of our customers also here with us today, right? So we work across different industries with most of the global majors, and we've leveraged a lot of our expertise or a lot of learning in working with many of these global companies to kind of understand the whole talent landscape, in a deep way, right? And see how that landscape can be maybe what we call productized, right? So today one of the big challenges when we are in the human resource field is that lot of our decisions involve a lot of human time, right? There's a lot of judgment based decisions that we take, right? It's very difficult to outsource talent decisions to an automated system, right? Because there's so much of judgment that we exercise in deciding which talent gets to play what role and what is our assessment of that talent as well, right? If three of us are together assessing the same person, we may end up having three different opinions on that person, right? And that's the space that we are in. So we spend a lot of time studying that space and trying to productize that space, right? And I'll maybe talk a little more about what I mean by productizing a little later, all right? So some context, we are at what we call an inflection point today, right? You must have all heard of this term future of work, right? And we are actually at a future skills conference today, right? Just so that all of us are on the same page, right? We're going to talk about three future of work drivers. So when we say future of work, what do we mean by the future of work, right? What are the key trends driving the future of work? So we see three major trends, right? The first trend is what we call a digital first trend, which is not a trend that started recently. It started more than 10 years back, where a lot of human work started going to machines and then AI started coming in, right? And today a lot of low level analytical work has gone to machines, it's been automated, right? And therefore human beings are forced to now start doing more higher order analytical work or more higher order creative work, right? And that has huge implications on therefore what skills we need to build, right? So this is trend number one. And we also have trend number two, which is the hybrid work trend, which actually really got accelerated 2 years back, right? When COVID really hit, right? And suddenly hybrid work, remote work became a thing, and today we are all working hybrid, right? So that's number two, the second trend. And the third trend is that of what we call flexible talent, right? Now this is a trend that is just emerging, okay? Many of us are not even sure whether it's really a trend, right? But what is flexible talent? The first two trends that I'm talking about of digital and hybrid have kind of combined together to create a world where your co-worker need not be a full-time employee sitting in the same office as yourself, but your co-worker today is someone who probably comes on a Zoom or a Google Meet or a Teams call with you, and every Teams call has a set of people coming together, working together on an agenda, and then each of us then goes off into different other calls, right? And in hybrid, some of us are taking those team calls at work, but many of the people that today we are collaborating with, right? If you look at the physical distance that they are sitting with you at, it's far higher today than what we could have imagined 2 years back, right? And it's reached a point where, earlier the comfort that you needed of working with people in the same organization, same office, today has become far more flexible, right? So you have, for example, concepts like fractional CFOs or fractional CMOs, fractional HR heads, people who give only a small portion of the time to an organization and they contribute their talent to multiple clients, right? And that trend is increasingly becoming big, right? And the trend is similar to what, if you thought of a tech cloud, right, where companies used to have servers in their office, now everything has gone to the cloud. Similarly, we see a trend in the next 10 years, instead of having employees in office, companies are going to start moving to what we call a talent cloud, right? So the tech cloud has not reduced the size of the office infrastructure. The office is still there, but the tech cloud has really gone way beyond that in terms of growth. So similarly, we will not lose employment because there is a talent cloud, right? But what you'll see over the next few years is the rate at which employment grows, full-time employment grows, will be very marginal, and most of the job opportunities will be coming up in what we call the talent cloud, right? And that is the third trend that we call the flexible talent trend, right? And so many people today are far more open to working in a flexible talent mode, right? So these are three major trends that we are talking about, and therefore there are three major challenges, right? One is the whole aspect of demand for talent. I'm sure a lot of us are facing this challenge. We are in a very weird world, right? On one side there's crazy inflation, on one side people are talking about recession, and on one side there's no talent available for jobs, right? And no one really knows what is happening, right? But talent demand is a major challenge that we have. Talent readiness is a second major challenge that we have, right? We are able to get fresh talent, or we are able to get talent who is probably not ready for the job yet, but we are not able to get talent in place who is absolutely ready and is able to definitely perform, and we have the confidence that they will perform, right? So that's talent readiness, right? And the third major challenge is that of talent engagement, right? Just a quick poll, how many of us face a talent engagement challenge in our workplaces, right? Where we feel that in the last 2 years, how many of our employees are really engaged, and every night when they leave the office, when they, that they are going to come back tomorrow morning in the same way, right? It's a major challenge today, right? So these are three challenges that are really facing the world today, right? And with these challenges, therefore there is what is the business problem that businesses face? We all are aware that in new hiring, right, especially people with a lot of feet on street roles, etc., there's a huge amount of attrition in the first few months, right? So the statistics across industries is more than 45% of people fail in the first 18 months in a new hire, right? And this is something that's well known. What is not so well known is the second statistic, right? That an equivalent number of promotions don't work, an equivalent number of role transitions don't work, right? So what that means, every time talent moves from role A to role B, right, there is a risk of failure, right? And you all may have seen a great high potential individual contributor becoming a very average manager or a manager of managers, right? We have all experienced that as talent professionals, right? So that's a role transition challenge that we have, right? So and there's also a capability challenge, right? I think all of us as L&D professionals, we like having facilitators so that they can engage and customize the learning, right? We like having digital because it's very scalable, right? But the challenge is, how do we get the best of both? It becomes very, very difficult. How do you get the scale of digital with the engagement of a human connect? That's a big problem that we always have in learning, right? Otherwise it is so easy to just launch a digital platform and then say, I've given you 10,000 courses, so don't worry about anything, right? But we all know, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way, right? So this is where we have a challenge, right? So now, why is this happening? So there are four, again, major reasons that we kind of put together for this, okay, which we call STOP. Okay, so what is STOP? The first reason is what we call static competency frameworks. The second is more traditional development interventions. The third is obscure skills profiling, and the fourth is what we call partial role fitment checks, right? And these are real world problems that all of us face in our jobs as talent management professionals, right? So right, what we have and why is this happening? Let me give you an analogy, right? About say 7-8 years back, how did we order food? How did we order food? We knew a few restaurants in our area. We would call a few friends, right, and ask what's a good restaurant in our area. They'll recommend ye acha hai, wo acha hai. Then we'll call the restaurant and say what is your special, kitna paisa hai, and all that. And then it used to be a very manual process, right? How is it happening today? Swiggy and Zomato. So what have they done? They've actually mapped the entire food pool around us, right, and put it on a platform so that which restaurant, what dishes, what pricing, what ratings, what feedback, all of that comes together, right? Now imagine the same concept for talent, right? So today one of our biggest challenges as HR professionals is by the time we are responding to a talent challenge and we've got a solution, the world has moved on and the problem has changed, right? So our manual way of working on this becomes a challenge, and therefore that is where talent intelligence as a space kind of really helps, right? Where how do you have a system that can help augment and help human beings make these decisions faster? A lot of work that we do may not really be required to be done with the high level of intelligence that we use to do that job, right? But like Richa mentioned, there are times when data is in silos. There are times when you don't have all the data in front of you, or you don't understand the data is just overwhelming, right? And that is where what we call intelligence, talent intelligence as a platform makes sense, right? So I'll just talk about what we mean by talent intelligence, right? So 3 parts to this, okay? Part 1 is what we call periscope, okay? It is basically how do you, for every role in the organization, every role family, every role, how do you create a competency profile in a very simple and easy way, right? That's part 1. Part 2 is how do you then get very simple and easy assessments for each of those competency profiles, right, on your fingertips. That's part number 2. And part number 3 is the first thing tells you, what your talent needs to be to perform in the role. The second piece tells you where they are today, right? Therefore, the third piece is then supposed to help bridge the gap between where they are to where you want them to be, right? Which is what we call Voyager, which is the development piece, right? So these are 3 engines that we are trying to build in parallel, right? We put them together to create what we call a talent intelligence platform, okay? And the platform has multiple components to it, right? There's a lot of text on screen, but in very simple words, today one of our big challenges is that when we are doing something, our industry has changed, new roles are coming, new competencies are coming, right? There's a lot of disruption in the market. So how can a system plug into the external world and help us with what is happening in the market, what is happening in a competition, so that it makes our life easier, right? So that's the first part of the platform. And then using that, how do we easily and quickly build competency profiles, how do we quickly get assessments, and how do we get development input. So this is basically what we are trying to put together, all right? So I'm going to give you one example when I say data from the external world, all right? So for example, I'm taking IT industry. So for every industry, the same data holds, but this is an example of one industry, right? So in India, there are about 62 lakh professionals today in IT, right? And the last 1 year, about 14 lakh of them have changed jobs, right? And you can see in which geographies they are based out of. So Bangalore has got about 10 lakh people, Delhi has got about 6 lakh, Hyderabad has also got 6 lakh, etc., right? And in each geography, okay, how many job posts are there, what is the demand, okay, which gender, male, female, right, which are the companies who are hiring this talent, right? All this data that I'm showing you today is data that we can easily source from employee profiles that employees put on the internet. So your platforms like Naukri, your platforms like LinkedIn, etc., where all this data is today available and curated and put together, right? So there's data of how many employees have moved from one geography to another. For example, in Bangalore, how many employees have gone from Bangalore to Hyderabad, how many employees have come from Hyderabad to Bangalore, right? Stuff like that, etc., right? And attrition at a company level, right? These are top companies in IT industry, how many employees they have, what is the attrition level in those companies, etc., right? And what are the skills that employees have put up on these portals, right? And which schools do companies hire from, right? So for example, Savitribai Phule University is the #1 contributor to IT industry in India. So if you take insurance, you have Insurance Institute of India. So for every industry, which schools really contribute to talent in that industry, right? And what are the key titles in the industry, right? And you also get data on, what is the talent segmentation like, how mature is the industry, how many people are there at each level of experience, and in their current position, how many people are there. So whatever I'm showing you now is at an industry level. Very interestingly, you actually know how many people today are actively looking for jobs, right? How do you know whether people are actually looking for jobs? By looking at how their usage on a recruitment platform is, right? And recruitment platforms today aggregate that data and give you that data in aggregate, saying in your company, so many thousand people are actively looking, which means, what does that mean? right? Maybe in 4 months time, they may not be there, right? And that's obviously a question to the talent management community. Therefore, what is it that we can do to engage, find the pain point, engage them, retain them? These are all questions that will come out of that data, right? So the same data, what I just showed you now, the same data at a company level. What I showed you earlier was at the industry level. But the same data now at a company level, you can see for this company, you can see how many people have gone to their competition, right? So you can see that they have hired so many people from competition, but they have lost a lot more people to competition for this particular company, right? So this is like a talent trend, right? Which many of us today don't really track. So we are not sure where our people are going to, but today this data is very freely available out there, right? And within a company, what is the attrition level function wise, right? Now we don't really have a tie up with this company, we don't get this data from their HR analytics team. But the same data is available out there in public domain, right? So data which was once privy only to maybe the top 4 or 5 people in the company, today is freely available out there, right? And similarly, schools, titles, the talent segmentation of the company, how many people in the company. So for example, out of 2.6 lakh people, about 47,000 people are actively looking for jobs in this company, right? And also online job postings, right? So what do players like us do with this data? We study the data, we go through posts like this, right? And we are able to very quickly build up the entire role family and competency profile of that company, right? And also when we go to them, recommend, hey, your competitors are also having these kind of roles, these kind of KRAs, KPIs, etc., right? Does that make sense for you, right? That is how the data kind of helps in kind of making companies more market responsive, right? If my competition is doing something, am I able to know that quickly rather than realizing it only 6 months or 12 months down the line, right? So this is the whole big data piece, right? The second piece is how do you then do what we call competency modeling, right? So for example, this is a sales competency model which goes from understanding the market to product and solution expertise to planning to execution to managing people to developing people to channel partner management or corporate sales management to internal stakeholder management to financial acumen, right? Now this is a little overwhelming if you are trying to actually solution for this, in a very manual way, right? Each of these competencies can further be broken down into, sub competencies, right? And I'm just highlighting a few critical ones, right? For example, if someone has to be really good at market intelligence, pattern recognition is a very necessary skill. If someone has to be really good at sales execution, being comfortable with having a money conversation, having a low need for approval, right? If someone is to really good at a people manager, they should be comfortable having a difficult conversation, etc., etc., right? So you map all these indicators so that when you're looking for talent in that particular role, you're able to have a holistic view of that, right? All right, and then again drill such data down to a role specific level, right? So here you can see that at a geography head level or a sales director level or an engagement manager level or an account manager level, this is again IT industry that I'm taking, you can kind of look at how to segment, right? And also for different competency clusters, what kind of learning inputs or modules can help talent, right? I'll just skip this slide, I'll come back to this a little later. I'm going to give you one example of BPO ops, right? So for example, if these are different functions in BPO ops, right? And this is a role family in a BPO ops company, right? Now within the role family, if you take say the team lead role, right? And if we could map all the competencies for that role across these different clusters of technical, behavioral, functional and organizational, right? And the same way if you can map, at an executive level, which is one level below the team lead, you do the same kind of mapping, you will see that for a person to move from executive to team lead, these are the step up competencies, right? So I may be good at these grays, but if I'm not good at the colored ones, I will not be a successful team lead, right? And similarly on for higher order roles, right? And then let's take one of these and then what we try and do is for this competency map, right, do a scoring across in a holistic way and finally give what we call a role fit score, right? So what's a role fit score? It's basically the fit of a talent to a particular role the way your company has defined it, right? What a player like us would bring in is more industry level understanding of which competencies for which roles, etc. But every company has its own nuances of how, what kind of culture they want to drive and how they drive performance, and therefore there are going to be changes in the model, right? But finally, the question is, can we arrive at what we call a role fit score for each person in the organization, right? All right, and how do you do that scoring? So this is a question that we get asked a lot, right? For example, over here, one of the competencies is active listening, right? So one of the competencies over here, you can see one of the indicators is active listening, and under active listening, if you look at how do you assess active listening, right? A very popular way is to look at what we call micro behaviors in active listening, right? How people do not do active listening properly. For example, assuming or jumping to conclusions, right? Or not able to read sarcasm, right? Or cutting short in the interest of time, or helping when only listening is important enough. So there are many different things. If you are really assessing someone on active listening, you know that these are all the ways in which maybe someone should probably not do active listening, right? And using this, being able to create a quick assessment is what you try and do, right? So when we map out competencies, what we try and do is list out all these success behaviors, derailers, micro behaviors for every competency, and then create a very holistic assessment to kind of assess that competency, right? And from that assessment is where you get a role fit score, all right? And an assessment report that comes out something like this, all right? So what I will do now, and once you get this, right? So in today's world, what do? First, we spend a lot of time in competency modeling because that takes a lot of time and energy, right? Then we find and empanel vendors for assessments, for specific assessments for specific roles, right? And that's again a 3, 4, 5, 6 month journey. And then you find vendors who come in for learning interventions and inputs, etc., right? What is the challenge here? It's just the long lead time and lead cycle, and the world is moving a lot faster today, right, than it used to move earlier, right? So is there a way to kind of accelerate and fast track this process, right? That is basically what we are here to kind of maybe just showcase to you, in the hopes of spurring some thoughts and ideas from all of you as well, right? If you are able to get a role fit score, right, which tells you that for this individual, this is where they are on each competency, each sub-competency, each micro behavior, right, then a hyper-personalized learning experience can be delivered for that person, right, because the platform knows what they are good at and what they are not good at in the context of that particular role, right, and therefore what is required to bridge the gap, right. So that's basically what we call a talent intelligence platform, all right. So what we will do now is we will just give you all logins to your tabs, right. What we've done is we've just put together a very simple assessment and a very simple simulation for you, each of which is only 5 minutes long, right. It's not a fully comprehensive holistic assessment because we have a very short time here. It's more like a dummy assessment just to help you understand how the platform works, all right. So when you log into the platform, you will be able to log into an assessment. It's a 5-question assessment. So go through the assessment, you get your assessment report, and after that you will go to a learning path where you can experience one simulation on active listening. So there will be an assessment on active listening, and then there will be a simulation on active listening. This is just to kind of give you guys a flavor of how does this play out actually in a platform, all right. So my team is here, they will help you log in, right. You have headphones, just plug in the headphones to your tabs. You can increase the volume on your tabs and then listen into the simulation where that is necessary, all right. So you'll come to a link like this, all right. Enter your email ID, enter your name, log into the platform, and then you will be able to download a report, okay. No, we are going to give you a link. Can you give the QR code here? Yeah, just open Chrome. Are you on Chrome?
It's directly taking us to Outlook. I don't know why.
Yeah, I'll just help you with that. Yeah, so just open Chrome, right? Just give the QR code. You see how a quick assessment can be run, and how do you go through a quick learning module which gets tailored based on the results of the assessment, right? Which is what we typically call hyper-personalization. right? So I know all of you are still going through the experience, so feel free to be around, finish the experience, take a help wherever required. We are also there at stall number 25, right? So if you want to continue the experience there, you can feel free to come there. We'll help you log in and then play the same experience there as well. All right. But I hope you guys got a small gist, right? I think in a small session, this is probably the best experience we can do in a very limited amount of time, right? And we wanted it to be a little hands-on so that you're not just going after just seeing a PPT. Okay. All right. So the idea is to kind of combine all these different pieces together, go from what is there in the market in terms of roles, competencies, KRAs, KPIs across industries, down to therefore competency profiling, down to digital assessments, and then down to hyper-personalized learning modules, right? Which are all. So one of the big challenges typically we see in digital learning is that the learning is not engaging enough to keep someone going through it, right? And most people end up going in a very next. It's a AI-based video that's coming to them, right? So they feel like they're actually in a real-world role play, right? And there are many different kind of game types, right? So different simulations have different kind of gaming elements and all that. So that's the final piece of the platform, right? And based on that, you get a development score and a development report, right? So for those of you who might finish the final module, there will be a small development report that you can get out of it, which tells you that this is where you are on the competency and these are your next steps for that particular competency area of active listening, right? And so on and so forth for multiple competency areas. All right. So that's basically what we just wanted to quickly preview to you. Like I said, we are also there at the stall. As all of you may be aware, we are also running a Future of Work Premier League, okay, FPL, right? And you can win an iPad if you become the Future of Work icon of the day, right? So please do participate. It's a very easy competition to participate in, right? And it also gives you an experience of how these simulations might help and contribute, right? Because, for example, how do you make a simulation on an area like, say, storytelling, right? Or executive presence or coaching? These are all tricky areas to kind of develop modules on. We all know they are not easy areas to kind of train people on either, right? But we've been able to make a lot of these sims, right? So I think that's something that us, talent management professionals, you might find it interesting, to see how those concepts have been developed and made into simulations. All right, great. So I think that's it from my end, right? I'm here open for any questions from any of you, and then the entire team is also there at the stall where we'd love to engage you during the rest of the day, right? But once again, really appreciate all of you for sitting through lunch hour for the last hour or so, right? Please continue the experience wherever you are, and we'll be around to take questions as well.